What makes a nation great? If you were to have to answer that question, what would you say? What makes a nation great? If it's the country's military power, we got a great nation, don't we? I mean, we've seen that recently there in Iran, what our military is able to do. So if a great military is what makes a country great, then we're great. But I don't believe that a great military is the measure of a nation's greatness. So maybe it's the wealth of a nation. If so, we must be a pretty great nation. Now, I know there's a lot of talk right now about affordability, but just listen to the reports from tourists who are here for FIFA. Have you heard what they are amazed by the wealth of our nation? The huge cars we drive, the size of portions at restaurants, the size of Buc-ee's. Can you imagine? They've been amazed by all-you-can-drink soda. And then to go in and they got one of those machines that you can choose from all these many different varieties. And ranch dressing. I mean, it's just blown their mind, the things that we have. But, I listen to young people, and young people here in the country today complain about the cost of living. And I got to tell you, it blows my mind. Growing up, we never ate out. We couldn't afford to eat out. That wasn't heard of. We were overjoyed when we got our second television set. I mean, it was amazing. We had two, and if you took that coat hanger and turned it just right, you could get some stations. Some of you know what I mean. And when I say coat hanger, you know that means it wasn't a new TV, but it was to us. And then we got a second telephone. Not a second telephone line. It was one telephone line, but two different places we could talk. And sometimes we talked at both at the same time. And, young people today, they don't eat out. They just call and have somebody deliver it to the house, and they stay home and eat it. I don't think they realize how good we have it here. If wealth is the mark of a great nation, then we're a pretty great nation. But I don't believe that wealth is the measure of a great nation. So you may be wondering then, what do I believe makes a nation great? Well, I believe the greatness of a nation is determined by the character of its people. Why do I believe this? Because that's what matters to God. We've been going through a series, A More Perfect Union, and we've spoken about our freedom, which gives us the choice to be selfish. But also, we have spoken of the freedom God gives that enables us to choose not to be selfish, but to live with concern for others. We also spoke last week about revival and how the hope for the future of our nation lies with us, the people of God. We can complain about them, but sinners just do what sinners do. Real revival begins with us. And we need a revival of holiness in this nation if there will be hope for the future. But what will that revival look like? To answer that, I invite you to stand with me, and we're going to turn to Scripture today. It's found in Micah chapter 6, verse 8. Micah 6:8. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. This is the word of the Lord. You may be seated. So Micah was a small town prophet in Judah. It's between the years 740 to 700 BC. The northern kingdom of Israel has already fallen to the Assyrians. That happened in 722 BC. But Judah, the southern nation, where Jerusalem is, it still stood. This was a time of wealth and prosperity for Judah. It was also a time of national pride. The northern kingdom, their cousins, they had fallen. But here in the south, they had continued to worship God at the temple and not at mountain shrines like their cousins. They still held to the true faith in God. I mean, if you want to believe it, just go down to the temple and see all the sacrifices they are offering. The people of Judah were so proud of who they were as a nation. But the question is, was their pride misplaced? Earlier, as I mentioned, all the reasons we could consider our nation great, I could have included the large churches we have in this country. It's pretty good, isn't it? Do you know the largest congregation is a congregation called Life Church? They're centered in Edmond, Oklahoma, but most of the people don't meet at one place. They meet at satellites and they watch the sermon through video. They have 85,000 each week. 85,000 who gather each week to hear the word of the Lord. They are the ones who developed the YouVersion Bible app that many of you have on your phone and some of you may have used already today. Now, the largest attendance in one single place is in Houston. Anybody know where that is? Joel Osteen, the Lakewood Church. They have 45,000 each week. 45,000. There are estimated to be between 1,600 to 1,800 Protestant megachurches in the United States that have at least 2,000 in attendance each week. That's a lot. These are part of the 350,000 to 400,000 congregations here in the United States. Now, found this interesting. The Vatican is the country, if you would, that has more churches per capita than any other country. There are 800 citizens of the Vatican, and there is one ministry for everybody who's a citizen of the Vatican. Now, the country with the most church buildings is the United States. They have more church buildings than any other country per capita, followed by Brazil, then Nigeria. I asked Sunday, is that true? He said, oh yeah, just go down any street, church here, church here, church here, church here. They're everywhere, right? In Nigeria. Not very big and sometimes not very good, but there are churches everywhere, right? In Nigeria. But if a church were to make a nation great, we got to be pretty great. But Micah would disagree with that. Now, Micah was the prophet during the reign of three different kings in Judah. The first one was a king named Jotham. His reign is described in 2 Kings 15, 34 through 35. Let me just read. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father Uzziah had done. The high places, however, were not removed. The people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. Jotham rebuilt the upper gate of the temple of the Lord. So Jotham tried to lead right, but it did not reach the hearts of the people. He tried, but it didn't reach their hearts. Then after him came Ahaz. You can read about him in chapter 16. Let me just read verses 2 through 4. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. Unlike David his father, he did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord his God. He followed the ways of the kings of Israel and even sacrificed his son in the fire, engaging in the detestable practices of the nations the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. He offered sacrifice and burned incense at high places, on the hilltops, and under every spreading tree. So after Jotham came Ahaz. Ahaz was the king, was king. When Ahaz was king, the people had no shepherd to lead them. How did the people have hope when their very own king was worshiping other gods? What hope did they have? And then came Hezekiah. We read about Hezekiah there in 2 Kings chapter 18. Let me just read a little bit, beginning with verse 1. In the year of Hosea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. His mother's name was Abijah, daughter of Zechariah. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father David had done. He removed the high places, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. He broke into pieces the bronze snake Moses had made, for up to that time, the Israelites had been burning incense to it. It was called Nehushtan. Hezekiah trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel. There was no one like him among all the kings of Judah, either before him or after him. He held fast to the Lord and did not stop following him. He kept the commands the Lord had given Moses, and the Lord was with him. He was successful in whatever he undertook. He rebelled against the king of Assyria and did not serve him. From watchtower to fortified city, he defeated the Philistines as far as Gaza and its territory. Hezekiah was a king who sought the Lord for his people. During his reign, the temple was repaired. It had fallen into disrepair. Not only that, but the sacred places we just read where the idols were worshipped, those were all destroyed throughout the kingdom. It looked like a time of amazing revival. While things looked good in Micah's day, it was not all what it seemed. Yes, there were great times of worship, but it seemed very shallow. An example of this can be seen in the great wealth of the nation. There truly was great wealth, but it was not equally shared. Listen to Micah. Micah chapter 2, verses 1 through 2. Micah 2. Woe to those who plan iniquity, to those who plot evil on their beds. At morning's light they carry out, because it is in their power to do it. They covet fields and seize them, and houses and take them. They defraud people of their homes. They rob them of their inheritance. Here's what was going on. The rich was getting richer, and the poor was getting poorer. Somehow in the midst of all the worship, there was no real connection with how they treated each other. Paul would later address this same issue there to the church in Corinth as he spoke of communion. Communion there in Corinth had become a detestable practice because they met in a house church, and when they met together, the rich were welcomed into the house, the poor had to stay outside, and when it came to communion, the rich would get a meal, and the poor outside would be lucky to get a piece of bread and a sip of wine. Here's what we need to keep in mind. A faith that does not affect how we treat others is no faith at all. Micah's message was simple. You cannot worship God on Saturday. Remember, they were Jews. You cannot worship God on Saturday and oppress your neighbor on Monday. Have you ever worshiped and went away and felt empty? Maybe the music was great and the message was fun and interesting, but it was like eating pancakes. Pancakes are fun to eat, especially if they make them into the, little shape of Mickey Mouse and, do all that stuff. But what happens in just a little bit? You're hungry again. Have you ever had the same kind of experience as you worshiped? You wonder if that's what's going on here in Judah. Look at Micah 6 through 7. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? That's a desperate cry. They're asking, do we need to even sacrifice our child? If God's going to hear us, do we need to sacrifice our own child to get God to listen to us? Reminds you of there Elijah and the prophets of Baal and Asherah on Mount Carmel. Do you remember that? They had this wonderful contest, whose God's real, and they built this altar and they put the sacrifice on it, and the prophets of Baal and Asherah, they began to pray and ask their God to bring down fire from heaven and consume their sacrifice, and they prayed and nothing happened. So what did they do? They prayed louder. I can just imagine them dancing in a frenzy around this altar, trying to get their God to wake up and hear them. Nothing happened, so what do? They start sacrificing their very own blood, thinking maybe if I just shed enough of my own blood, our God will hear. But their God never answered. Their God couldn't answer. As Micah addresses the people of Judah, you get that same idea. They want to know if maybe they should just worship louder, or maybe they need to sacrifice more. But Micah tells them that getting louder or sacrificing more is not the answer. The answer is asking God what He wants. So there in Micah 6:8, we read, He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. More than louder singing and more extravagant giving, what God is concerned about is how they treat other people. That's why I believe the measure of a nation is the character of its people. What does this mean to us as our nation prepares to celebrate 250 years? First of all, as I said last week, the answer begins with us here who call God our Father. If God is calling us to be people of justice and mercy, we need to ask ourselves, how are we doing being people of justice and mercy? Now, some of you might be saying, now, Pastor, don't go preaching all that liberal stuff on us this morning. But justice and mercy is not partisan. Well, we made it such. I remember a few years back, we could use the word social justice in any setting and it was okay. But all of a sudden, because one side uses social justice and the other side, oh, we can't talk about social justice. But how can you be against something as Christians that God is firmly for? I mean, just look at Deuteronomy chapter 10. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 17 through 19. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great God, mighty and awesome, who shows no partiality and accepts no bribes. He defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow and loves the foreigner residing among you, giving them food and clothing. And you are to love those who are foreigners, for you yourselves were foreigners in Egypt. God is inviting us to love as He loves. And if we're going to love as God loves, that means we need to love the people He loves. Now, I want you to know, I don't believe I have all the answers. I'm going to talk about some stuff here for just a moment. I want to tell you, I don't believe I have all the answers. Let me just admit that right up. There are a lot of things I cannot figure out in my head. On the one hand, I am not for open borders. I think there needs to be an organized system where we vet those who come into this nation. But on the other hand, I don't fault the father of a 14-year-old son in Honduras who the gang says, we're going to come and get your son and you have no choice but to let him join us. That father did everything he could. He risked everything he had to bring his son to the United States so his son could have a choice other than being in a gang. I'm torn on this subject. But what I'm not torn about is how we treat them when they are here. Just because they may be here illegally does not mean they are less human than we are, nor should they be treated with less honor and respect than anyone else. Yes, if they commit a crime after they come to this country, there has to be consequences. But the only crime committed by the vast majority is coming here illegally seeking a better life. And can you blame them? What would Jesus do? See, that's the question people ask who are seeking to be holy as God is holy. What would Jesus do? If we want to please God, that's exactly what we should be asking when it comes to dealing with those who are here illegally. Now, since I may already be in trouble for bringing that up, let me go further. There's a rise in what is called democratic socialism today. Now, I'm not sure those two really go together, but let me address it for a moment. I think there are two main reasons this group is on the increase. The first reason is jealousy. They look at those who have more than they do, and they're jealous. And instead of taking risks themselves and working hard, their answer is just to take what others have and give it to themselves. But that's just the first reason. The second reason this group is on the rise is because people look at those who are suffering in this country and they wonder if anyone cares. They see the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. While some people may be poor because they chose that lifestyle, and yes, I have known some people who chose to be poor. That was their choice. But most people don't choose that life. Some have been brought up in homes where they believe poverty is all they have to look forward to. And they have built their life on that belief that they have been told, without someone taking them by the hand and helping them walk into a new reality. What hope do they have? There are some who have been forced into a life they never anticipated. A string of unfortunate events have left them unable to find a solution up from the bottom. Have you ever been there? Without help to get their feet back under them, they are destined to fail. Then we have those veterans who were all excited as they headed off to serve their country. But they were so naive. What they saw and experienced has left them a shell of who they were. Maybe because of injury. Maybe because they turned to substances to dull the memories they could not escape. Now, I know that some facing the same situation have handled it better. But could it be that they had a better support system and a better faith? What I'm trying to say is that we so easily want to judge people who find themselves down and broken. But what if we had faced what they face with what they had to face it with? And what if we could do something to change how they're facing it? Now, I do not believe that socialism is the answer. It's never worked before because of the sinfulness of mankind. Like any system, it becomes corrupt. Just ask them in Venezuela. The answer is God working in the hearts of his people. See, that's how we started this series. True freedom comes from God. It's God changing our hearts so that we can freely give our concerns to others. How many of you are aware that the Salvation Army is a church? How many of you knew it's a church? Okay. As a church, the Salvation Army has 1.7 million members worldwide. As a church, 1.7 million members worldwide. That is actually smaller than the Church of the Nazarene. The Church of the Nazarene has 2.72 million members worldwide. We're actually sister holiness churches. We have a very similar theology with the Salvation Army. They actually use Trevecca Nazarene University to train their pastors. And so we're very connected. Here's the amazing thing about them. Annually, they serve 28 million people in the United States alone. 28 million people. You see, they took seriously that if they were going to live out WWJD, that would mean caring for the people that Jesus had a special place for in his heart. The people that are all too often forgotten by society. The people who could not help themselves. As I said 2 weeks ago, earlier today as well, true freedom is given to us by God. True freedom is the ability to put aside our own self-centeredness and focus on the needs of others. Only God, through the power of the Holy Spirit, can give us this kind of love. Now, it's not all bad news. I talked about how amazed some of these people here from FIFA have been about some of our stuff. They've also been impressed by how they've been treated here. See, they came after watching the media, they came expecting the worst of the worst, but they discovered, you know what? These Americans aren't all that bad. One story I heard was about a group that they needed to get from their hotel to the stadium, and it was raining. And so if they had walked, they'd have gotten soaked. And so they were going to call an Uber. But the clerk there at the hotel, she volunteered to give them a ride in her own car. They were impressed. And so am I. You see, the greatness of a nation is determined by the character of its people. I've also been impressed by some in our church who have recently gotten involved in serving our community. I'd love to see us do this more and more. To encourage you, you may not have noticed, you walked in, you sat down. So I want everybody to turn around and look at Autumn back there. Do you see Autumn? Wave, Autumn. Right above her is a bulletin board. Or at least it looks like a bulletin board. It's a wall. And I've put there some pictures from where some of our folks in the last couple of weeks have been out, and they've been blessing people in our community. I missed a text yesterday, so I missed the picture yesterday of Annabella helping with the Venezuela relief, so it's not up there yet. But when you get a chance, look at those pictures and see. We're just beginning to put these pictures up. I want to invite you to send me pictures. When you're out making a difference in people's lives in our community, I want you to send me pictures. You say, oh, Pastor, I don't want to do that. I don't want the glory to be all for me. Get over that for a moment, okay? The reason I want you to send me a picture is, one, so we can celebrate with you what God has done in your life and through your life. But also, I want you to make other people jealous. Guys, we talked about that on Thursday night. You know, God was making the Jews jealous through the Gentiles. When they saw what the Gentiles was happening to the Gentiles, they got jealous. Why isn't God doing this with me? And that's what I want you to do. I want pictures up there. I'm going to have to make them smaller, so people will walk in and say, "Oh wow, I wish my picture was up there. Why isn't my picture up there?" And then they'll think, "Oh wow, I need God to do something in me so my picture can be up there." Because that's the only way we serve others, right? Because God changes our hearts and fills us with compassion, so we can't help but help others. And it doesn't have to be something the church organizes. I've got one up there of Carol and the gentleman sitting right there beside you, right? And his wife, who recently passed away. But Carol's been helping them, and so I wanted to recognize the impact. Maybe you see your neighbor. Maybe your neighbor's grass is about this high because their wife had a hip surgery, and they're so busy taking care of their wife after their hip surgery. Not that that might ever happen, but that they need somebody to come out and mow their yard. So maybe you go and mow their yard. Take a picture of their yard, of you, of your neighbor, something. And let us see what you're doing, because we want people to know the good that's happening so that we can spur on more good. Because that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be making a difference in the lives of those around us, because God has so changed our heart that we can't help it. Of course, like every week, I want to give you a chance to respond to the message this morning. Perhaps God has been convicting you. He's been saying, you're going to have a hard time getting your picture up there, because your life revolves around you and what's convenient for you and what's comfortable for you, what you want, what you need. Somehow something happened, and you recognize this morning that maybe it's time for God to do some work in you. You're not feeling what you should be feeling. And this morning you just want to come cry out to God and say, God, make me a person of compassion. Make me a person of compassion. I got to tell you, there is no more joy than being able to serve others and to see the impact you make on their lives. You see, he sets us free to serve. And when he does, not only do we bless others, but man, we're blessed in return. What a joy it is to let God use us to make a difference. I want to invite you to stand. We're going to sing a song, and as we sing, if you need to come and pray, let me invite you to come and pray this morning. Let's sing together.